Hello, film friends, friends of film, and everyone in between. Welcome to the Film Folklore Podcast. I am Jed Props, and I'm joined today by Zoe Props.
Hello.
Justin Sound.
Hello.
Our tried and true producer. We are missing both of our ADs today. Joe is on a commercial, I believe. Good for him. Working a job. Yay, Joe. Chris, as we understand it, is dropping sick guitar licks somewhere around town because he went to the wrong studio. So he also ghosted me on, I thought was a fair question when I asked him how many guitar licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop. And he didn't say anything, so that was rude.
He's probably still thinking about it. And that's why he's
actually
oh my God.
not here.
Actually, You're right. You know what the problem is? We can't count.
That was kind of the thing.
We can't count. You know what the answer is? Second.
There you
That's
go.
how many licks.
Two twos.
Yet another callback. All right. So anyway, we have a very, very special episode today for you guys. We're going to be doing part 2 of our little mini series on the strike situations that have been plaguing 2023. And for this one, we're going to get specifically into WGA talk. And we were able to get some time with a writer friend, Todd Farmer, who has had a very unique career as a writer. And I mean, y'all are welcome to look him up on IMDb, but some of his highlights would be Jason X, the My Bloody Valentine remake, and Drive Angry he co-wrote with a friend and director of the movie, Patrick Lussier. Also a very nice guy, both of them are. And that's where I met Todd originally, and then I've had the fortune of working with him in a kind of acting cameo capacity as well, so that was cool. But yeah, so Zoe, I don't know, like writers, we writers are difficult because there's a film writer and then there's a TV writer, and they're very different beasts in the way that we interact with them. Mm-hmm. Like TV writers are essentially like episodic producers as well. So they have a lot of like hands-on say-so, and they're answering a lot of questions more so than a director oftentimes. And then a film writer, typically they show up to set, they might have notes and conversations with the director, but we don't really interact with them much. What would you say to your experiences with writers in that kind of capacity?
Frankly, I've mostly worked on TV shows.
Yeah, that is the bulk of the work these days.
Yeah, that's kind of it. So they've always been around. And, you know, yeah, I've actually worked with some pretty cool people that I've never had any kind of issue with. And then, of course, there's the random, irritating, very put their nose into everything where maybe kind of shouldn't. But I think I feel good. I think I feel good about writers. I think overall,
You are bringing up a good point.
I feel good.
When we're on a TV series, several episodes in, you know, maybe let's say it's episode 5 that we're working on, and now you have a new writer that maybe you've never seen before. Mm-hmm. They don't really announce themselves. It's not like they're wearing a T-shirt that says "I'm the writer." So, although I would like maybe if they had a baseball cap that just said writer.
It would be helpful.
Like a la 30 Rock kind of stuff.
Yeah, it would be incredibly helpful.
But a lot of times they'll just show up and then they start like messing with all your stuff, where it's like you'll see oh my God, what was it? Oh my God, what was that TV series? Star-Crossed only had one season. It was a CW show that failed miserably for good reason. It was painful to watch. But I had a thing where there was an outdoor party, and I had set up all the kind of prop dressing on top of the set dressing. So it's like, what I mean by that is we typically come in with like a top layer, we call it sometimes, and it just kind of peppers over the set dressing that's already been in place. So if they're putting the tables and chairs and, you know, say the patio furniture, maybe they're putting out some serving dishes and stuff for the party, we're just adding to that. And usually we do the food. And that's exactly what had happened. We did the food, so I got everything out. I got everything, you know, presented. And then this woman I've never seen before just starts messing with curtains. She starts rearranging the food that I just put out. And I'm kind of like, I grab my mic from my walkie, and I'm calling another prop person to an off channel for, as we talked about. And then I'm just going, there's someone here that is moving all of our stuff around. And I don't know what to do because I want to be mad, but I don't know who this person is. And
That's always the problem too. Is that you cannot just go unless you know exactly who they are.
Yeah.
You cannot just go up to someone and be like, "Hey, who the hell are you? And what the hell are you doing?" You have to turn to someone else and be like, "Who the hell are they?"
Yeah, exactly.
Because you might step on the wrong toes.
Exactly.
You know who it is. They're also very confident to be moving everything around.
Exactly.
They might be important or not at all.
And they don't, I'll say in their defense, they don't know our union lines. It's not like I don't get upset because they don't know that. It's just, there's no piece of paper handed to them to say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, because that's a union thing, But,
exactly. I try not to get too mad, but it is also hard to see someone just fingering all of your things.
Yeah, essentially.
You doing?
Yeah.
You going shopping?
Yeah. Like, hey there, buddy, you comfortable?
Yeah.
You want to take a cupcake? You hungry? Yeah. Which that's another thing we can talk about another time is other people messing with prop food. We could have an entire episode on that.
Oh, yeah, there's some funny stories.
I've seen crew eat some disgusting things that I know that they're not good. What was it? Underground season 1, we had a outdoor debutante thing, and it's 19th century. We're at the edge of this forest. We have all these pedophores and cakes and setups and tea sandwich kind of blah. All day they've been out there in the sun and the elements and everything.
It's the thing that's what I try to explain to people. I'm like, if no one's eating them, they're not refrigerated. It's been out. I remember this girl just begging for this pastry we had, and I'm like, it's been out for like 14 hours. You don't want that anymore. It's gross.
Guess
You don't want to eat that.
if you had to guess the department that would be staring at that stuff all day, who would be staring at that?
Camera.
That's exactly correct. And it was a camera assistant at the end of the night when we were throwing out stuff. He goes, whoa, you're throwing away that cake? And I'm like, this cake that's been out here for 9 hours? Yeah. And also it wasn't, to be clear, a cold day. That was, I believe, late July. And he not only wouldn't let me throw it away, he barehanded it and ate it with his bare hands. And I just didn't know what to think about it. So I just kind of shook my head and went back to rapping, because it's like, God, you've been looking at it all day. You know that it's been sitting out all day. And first of all, you didn't have a problem with that. Second of all,
He just stuck his hand.
you didn't even say got a fork. You just palmed it.
I don't know whether I love that or hate that.
I was kind of just mesmerized by it. And I was like, I want to go home. I'm going to turn my attention back to rapping out. But that was, okay, buddy, you do you.
Man,
just
he's the
hungry
star of the show.
Just hungry from the start, and then just after looking at it all day, it's just fuck it. I'm going for it. We had a DP on a show, and too bad Chris and Joe aren't here. I think they were with
I
us.
wonder if it's the same DP that. But please tell.
It was I think it was Queer as Folk.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so he were you there for that cake?
I wasn't, but I had just worked with him and have
Gotcha.
heard.
You heard about that cake?
Yes.
Okay.
Many things.
It was right after the first shot, and it was a cake that was going to be. I don't think they were cutting it or anything in the scene, so they were just going to use the same cake all day. And I think it was right after they might have got 1 or 2 shots in, and he just goes for it.
Wow.
Yeah, those are stories like they went to lunch.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Props comes back, and there's just a big old slice taken out of this cake, and it was labeled. It was on their cart. Hey, Props, don't touch. And this guy just did this little Homer Simpson moment. Woo! And just took it.
Maybe we'll get Castro on. Shout out to Castro, and have a whole episode about prop food, because he can definitely speak a lot to that as well. But he has good memories. That's what we were saying before. Is that I think you and I have had more PTSD type experiences.
Yeah, a bit traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Worked a couple times with just food that just kept on showing up a lot.
It's great for weight loss though, because I find myself eating less because I now have an issue with food, and it's all thanks to people not reading notes and signs that say things like "don't eat."
Yeah.
And this is prop food. And then when you go to use it for a scene and you realize some, I don't know, we'll just call him a cinematographer, was, just eating the food off your cart. Because little known fact about camera, they can't read. They're all numbers people. So they can tell you a distance of something in numbers, but they don't read too good. Anyway, so back on today's thing, we got a special guest, and hopefully we can have him on for future stuff because he's a lovely man. With us today, we have a writer to talk to us about WGA, a little bit about his background and where he is currently, which is, I'm super jealous. But let's all welcome Todd Farmer. Welcome, Todd.
Hello, Todd, and welcome.
Todd, hello, and how are you?
I am excellent.
That's so good. So I met Todd back on Drive Angry. You co-wrote Drive Angry, right, with Patrick?
I did. Yeah, Patrick and I co-wrote.
Patrick Lucio was the director as well, and that was a wild movie to work on.
It was fun. I mean, that's the first movie that I've worked on that we basically shot what we wrote. Like, we didn't get a ton of notes. We didn't. We had to change things for locations. Like we had the church was like a last minute thing. So suddenly you guys were all scrambling to find creepy Jesus pictures and stuff to put on the walls. But right. Other than that, I mean, it's exactly what we wrote and went out with. So that was like lovely. That never happens.
It is very rare. And you also got a little cameo in it.
I did. I was completely butt-ass naked.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the naked part. You were Amber Heard's shitty boyfriend, right?
I was.
And this is
Who knew?
Pre-poopy pillow Amber Heard.
Pre-poopy, yeah. She didn't poop on anything there.
Yeah, she seemed nice at the time, as I recall.
She did. She was easy to work with back then. So
yeah, and then Nicholas, Mr. Cage, was in full form.
He was.
For those that haven't seen it, highly recommend you go watch it because it is an insane movie.
It's nuts.
Yeah, there's a not to spoil too much, but there's a sex scene that is also a fight scene, and I'll leave it at that. Because I think the less I say, the better. Well, Todd, if you would give us a little background to you and how you got into the industry, how you became a writer, what got you in?
I grew up in Kentucky, and I was the kid around the campfire always telling the ghost stories, and it never. The idea of leaving small town Kentucky and going to Hollywood, that just wasn't something that you could ever do. It's not something you could even comprehend. No one was talking about it. No one had ever done it. It just wasn't on the list of things to do. But becoming a writer was certainly something that I thought about, and writing novels and that sort of thing. So that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I was pursuing. And then after college, a friend of mine said, well, why don't you just go to Hollywood? Why don't you just drive out there? So I loaded up my 486 computer and some garbage bags full of clothes and drove to, I knew a friend of a friend who had a place in Venice Beach.
Oh, wow.
Overlooking the ocean. And I slept in the hammock for a couple of, I guess maybe a month or two. That was a, prerequisite to what was coming in the coming years. Who knew? But no, it was great. I ended up working for the guy who created Friday the 13th and eventually wrote a Friday the 13th movie. So that's
right.
It was, it was much easier than it felt much easier than it actually is.
The Jason X is Todd's contribution to the franchise. And which now, I don't know, were they on 15 now or something? I've lost count. 10 is one of my favorites, actually. I like, oh my God, I'm going to blank on the song, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor.
Yeah.
It's like that song gets in your head, and when you watch the trailer alone. But when you penned your first script, was it just a treatment that you were trying to get a foot in the door, or did you have like a full fleshed out thing you were shopping around?
Like the very first script?
Yeah, when you first were trying to get your foot in that door.
The first one I sent to Dean Laurie. Dean Laurie he wrote Jason Goes to Hell. And he was a friend of a friend of a friend. And so someone had opened the door to him. I sent him a script. He called me and said, I started reading your script. I threw it away after 40 pages because you have absolutely no idea how to structure a screenplay. But you've got some good ideas. I can't teach you good ideas. That's natural. But I can teach you structure. And he said, move out to LA. And I did. And he was the one I suggested move out.
Oh, okay.
And so he taught me how to write. And it was really as simple as that.
And this is, I'm guessing, predating Final Draft.
Yes. Well, this was Scriptware. Scriptware was around at that time.
Okay.
Scriptware was just before, and Scriptware I wish hadn't gone out of business because it was very easy and it was easy to use. Final Draft, they come out with a new version every year or two in order to keep you spending money. But Scriptware was just the basics. That's all you really need to write screenplay.
Yeah, I think Final Draft, which is screenwriting software, but I think they took a page from the Adobe world where it's like, we're just going to constantly update you and then occasionally move buttons around. I
would love it if for one of the updates, they just stop it from crashing. That'd be great. Right. I mean, they could double the price and I'd pay for it.
Yeah, right.
You know what? This update, we're going to stop it from crashing. Hey, I love that idea. I'm totally in.
If you're listening, Final Draft people.
I'll charge you a couple more bucks a month for that.
Yeah, if you're listening, Final Draft people, I still use your software, but you can kiss my ass.
So, what was your first kind of taste of success from the writing end?
I mean, Jason X moving forward certainly was, it felt, I had no idea that Jason X would only be, wouldn't do well. Mm-hmm. I thought, I was modeling it off of Aliens, which I thought was, a good movie. And I knew that there were other horror icons who went to space, but I wasn't making those movies. I was making Alien or Aliens or something like that. At least that was in my mind. Mm-hmm. And so to me, this was very successful. And plus to go on set and like I had written that they have these little communicators in their ears that they talk, the way they talk to each other. And somebody had made them. And I just remember marveling at that I wrote something and it was literally a throwaway line. It was just, because they got to communicate right. And they're on a spaceship and I didn't want them to use, steal from Star Trek. So they had these little things in their ears and then someone created them. Not only did they create them, we had to go get molds for our ears because I played one of the grunts. And so that was just like, it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I got to be careful what I write because somebody's going to build this.
I am so happy.
So that blew my mind.
As a crew member, I am so happy you said that.
No, it's and that's where my love for crew came from. That's where it started because I saw that crew, for the most part, weren't making a lot of money. They were there when I got there, and they were there when I left. And I was like, well, they're working harder than everyone else. They're not making as much money. And they don't get any of the publicity and props that, when I walk down the street, people spit and say, you wrote Jason X. Like, you guys don't get that.
No. Sometimes people say, what would I know that you've worked on? And you're like, oh my God. Like what a vague question. Cause it's like, I don't know. What do you watch? What do you like?
But we would get that question too.
Right.
Like, have you written anything I've seen? Yeah. And I would, and it was always before anything had come out. Cause I was in the business for 3 years before I got a movie, which is really fast.
Yeah.
But people would say, have you done anything I've seen? And I would say, have you seen Armageddon? Wow, Armageddon. I was like, it's a great movie, isn't it? I never said I didn't write it or I wrote it. I just said, have you seen that? And it was wonderful for conversation.
Oh my God, I got to remember that.
Later, I worked with Jonathan Hensley, the guy who wrote it, and I told him that story. He was not happy about it.
Oh, whoops.
Well, he thought it was funny, but not happy.
God, that's so good. There's we were going to tell the story at some point, but we always get random people in the street that yell at us can I be in your movie? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or what movie is this? And we're always like, oh, it's a mayonnaise commercial. Is kind of what we were taught to say as PAs. But yeah,
That's funny.
but we'll eventually. I was set dressing on a show. It was the Bonnie and Clyde miniseries, and our Teamster driver was filling up the gas, and these random people walking by the gas station, they just saw the big Hollywood truck kind of sign on the thing. They're like, "Can I be in your movie?" And the Teamster driver goes, "Nah, baby, they pre-did that." And normally when people say these things to us, we'll go, "Oh, that's not my department," or I don't know, man. And they won't leave you alone. They'll just keep asking questions like, well, is there a number I can call, or who should I talk to?
Yeah.
That Teamster driver said that line, and these two guys go, "Oh, okay." And then I was like, wait, what just happened here? So I have now used that line, "Nah, they pre-did that," at least a dozen times. And I've done it in multiple cities, people of all walks of life, and it has worked 100% of the time. People just accept it very strangely, and then they just leave.
Look, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the Teamsters.
Yeah, exactly. So after Jason X, did you kind of enjoy like a little break? I mean, how does it work in the writing world? Do you typically like feel like after having some success like that you have to immediately jump back in with another idea, or do you just kind of enjoy the moment? How do you like to go about it?
Well, that was a weird one because Jason X didn't come out for a long time. Like, we finished the movie and it sat there forever.
Oh, I didn't know
DeLuca left New Line. A bunch of things at New Line changed. Freddy versus Jason was in development. They didn't want to put their focus on Jason X until they knew what they were doing with Freddy versus Jason. So a lot of things happened. And then I started working on a thriller because I thought, like, horror wasn't what it is today. Horror was a stepping stone. That's where you started out. It's like, you only had Dimension and New Line making horror movies for the most part. And then you moved on to Armageddon. You moved on to something else. And it wasn't until Scream came out that suddenly everyone's doing horror, and horror had exploded. And now every production company, every production house, every studio has a genre department, and they're cranking out horror constantly, and that's the way it should be. But at the same time, back then we didn't know any better, and so I had wrote this thriller and I went out with it. And this was before Jason even came out. Jonathan Hensley, that's how I met him, was attached to direct it. Ended up selling it, and so that's what was going on when Jason X came out, and nobody went to see it. And it was this movie that was, and so that's when I got the first taste of, oh, so if you don't write a movie that's successful, then you and the director tend to take the blame for that. And that is how, it's sad, but that's sort of how it runs down to some degree. Now you can always bounce back, but you certainly take the hit. And so, but fortunately, I already had this other thing move forward before that happened. So that sort of kept me in the industry. And I worked, except for maybe 1 or 2 bad years, I had a job every year. And I never got rich off of it, but I made enough money to fill the coffers for that year and work for that year. Because I would get paid 50 to 60 to 100 grand, and sometimes far more. And that was enough to keep me running, pay off all the credit card debts and so forth. But, I never got rich enough that I could buy a castle in Portugal.
Which, for anyone listening, he is in a castle in Portugal. Which is,
eventually that does happen.
Yeah. It's a logical stepping stone.
Yeah, you might as well.
That's maybe a good segue. So could you speak a little bit to how you get into the Writers Guild upon having a script being picked up and everything, like the process of getting into the guild?
For me, everyone, there's different ways of getting in the guild. You can get certain jobs in TV, and if you get a certain number of jobs, then you can apply and you pay your fee and you can pop right in. For me, I think it was just one theatrical, and I'm not sure if it's still that at the time or still that now, but at the time I think Cunningham paid my fee. I don't remember what it was. It was a couple of $1,000s, and he paid the fee and to get me into the guild. And so Jason X was my first step in, and then I've been a guild member ever since. So it's and the guild has on several occasions like saved my butt. I mean, residuals and so forth were, this strike and the strike in 2008 were needed because, as I said, I've always done one movie a year, but by the end of that year, the coffers are starting to empty and the credit cards are starting to fill up. And a lot of times those residuals are what keep you afloat. So it's a big deal. And the fact that when streaming started, suddenly there were no residuals, they sort of vanished, then that hurt a lot of people. So.
And I'm glad you brought that up. In the part one, we touched on that a little bit as far as the streaming world brought a big decline to the residual world, which a lot of people rely on, especially in the subject of these strikes, writers and actors. But if you had to kind of ballpark maybe a percentage, like say your paycheck versus your residuals as far as income, what would you say the difference is now from say pre-streaming?
I mean, it's hard. It depends. I mean, it kind of depends on the movie and depends on, but take Jason X, for instance. Jason X came out, did not make money at the box office. I mean, I think it made maybe its money back, but certainly didn't make its advertising back. Not in the beginning stages. I think over DVD and so forth, that made their money. But I was paid, I think, $60,000 to write Jason X. And I was paid my first residual check on Jason X, and I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know what it was. We sort of talk about these green envelopes, and there's a drawer over there full of green envelopes that show up in Portugal. And those, I didn't know what it was. And so it showed up and I opened it up and it was a check for, just north of six figures, which was more than I got paid for the movie. That does not and has never happened again. Because Netflix came along and other streamers came along and they weren't paying the same. And I remember the first time I saw a green envelope was from a guy named Dean Reisner. Dean Reisner wrote High Plains Drifter, Dirty Harry, and he was sort of a mentor of mine when I first moved out here. He was 79 when I met him, and I remember him walking over. I'd go see him once, twice, three times a month. And we'd sit around and talk and tell old stories. And he went and got one of those checks and brought it over. And it was a check for $10,000 and it was from Dirty Harry. This was probably 1999. And he was still getting checks for $10,000 from Dirty Harry, which was a movie that came out ages ago. And so it's not, certainly VHS got paid a big chunk of money. And then CD or DVDs came along and the studios were like, well, we don't know if this is going to work. So we need you to give us a discount. We said, sure. As the guild said, sure, we'll give you a discount. And then they never came back up. Streaming was even worse. So whatever we were making, I mean, DVDs were a dream compared to what we were getting paid for streaming. So anyway, it's just, it's the way it is. It kept getting worse and worse until, I don't know what the percentage would be, but my last movie, I think my first check was maybe $10,000.
Wow. Compared
to $100,000, which is Jason X.
And as a reminder to anyone listening, Todd's also living in Los Angeles at this time. So keep that in mind when you're talking about cost of living and everything. Money is very different in a city like that versus like middle America or something. So I think there's a lot of people, you'll see, especially as the strikes have gone on, that you realize a lot of people don't really understand that if you know the name of a writer or if you have a favorite actor, celebrity type or whatever, you're talking about a small percentage of the actual members in these guilds. And a lot of people are suffering, but they're suffering in the name of having better things down the road. And if you could, because 2008 was a little bit of a different situation than 2023. But what was the driving issue for the strike in 2008?
I mean, it was the same situation. I mean, it was certainly residuals, certainly healthcare. I mean, it was all the same sort of issues. I want to say at least in my mind, residuals was the bigger issue because we'd taken such a loss on the VHS from what we were getting. We were just always trying to get back to that number, and it just wasn't happening. But it was a much different time, and certainly reality TV was already in the steps of being created, but the strike helped launch it. And so Survivor and Amazing Race and those, and my wife worked on Amazing Race for 6 years. So, I mean, but it certainly created that. We haven't seen that this time, in that when the strike happened, normally reality TV would explode. It didn't this time. The studios and the networks were very careful in where they spent their money. They weren't going out making risks. They were taking product that they knew was successful and they were increasing it. They were making it 2 hours longer, an hour and a half longer. They were doing that sort of thing. Or instead of doing Below Deck, they were doing Below Deck Nicaragua. I mean, they were doing different, it was just getting more and more kinds of the same thing, because that was less risk. And, but we all come at it from a different perspective. And certainly I feel like, what we accomplished this time through the Guild, all the things that we won, just helps IATSE, just helps the writers, helps the actors, helps everyone coming along behind us.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope any.
That's a good segue to can you speak a little bit as far as some of the bigger pieces that y'all were able to win in the negotiations?
I mean, it was a win across the board. If you go back to what they were willing to give us in May and what we ended up getting, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, we got, not only did we get theatrical, but we got streaming bumps and ad-based streaming bumps, which has never happened. Foreign residuals went up. Foreign residuals never goes up.
Right.
Although I am predominantly feature, what happened in the what they were doing to TV writers was just so short-sighted, in that you're not allowing, you're keeping the room small so that the new writers can't come in and learn from the seasoned writers, so that in 20 years from now, we got a bunch of guys who don't know how to write TV, because it's a completely different monster than the feature writing.
Yeah, that's a really
I would like
point.
to say, I think TV is the more adult game, because you can't just sit around and nitpick something. You write it and you go shoot it, and you've got it's a much different world. And I think the two have to work well together, and they did. I love what they negotiated and what they got, and the whole thing with AI. Now the Writers Guild gets to approve what kind of AI is used. So that's a big, they more regulate what's happening with AI. And so that's fantastic. And we got, I think, 2.5 times the money that they were saying we couldn't have back in May. So just across the board. So all in all, it's a massive win. And not only that, but then the whole thing with, streaming companies didn't want to tell us how much they were making, so we could base our residuals on that.
Right.
And so we won that. So now there's more transparency, which didn't exist.
Exactly.
And should always exist. And so, they would go on and say, oh, look at how many people watched our show. And then we'd talk to them. Yeah, not that many people watched it. So, that transparency is there now where it wasn't. So.
That's fantastic. We spoke a little bit in part one about the CEOs of some of these more major streaming services and the insane amount of money that is circling around at the top.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's tough for them to get by on the money they were making. I feel for them.
It's hard when you have to wait to buy your third yacht. It's a little difficult.
Yeah. Wait for the better price. You can't just go out and buy it willy-nilly. You gotta shop around. You gotta look at eBay.
Right. And then Iger had made his kind of Marie Antoinette comment that didn't go over very well.
No.
And he was quickly singing a different tune, I believe, within 2 days of making that comment. But yeah, it was the fact that they couldn't even be bothered to come to the negotiations in the beginning just felt like such an insult. And we're outsiders, looking at the negotiations. But when they finally said that they would come at the end, they still couldn't come in person. They only came via Zoom. And they made an offer to the WGA, and they even had the audacity to say, "This is our final offer," as if that's something they get to dictate.
Yeah.
So
no, I love that. There was one guy on the picket line this time where he was talking about they making offers and saying things like, well, if you guys stay on strike, we're just not going to pay you. And he's like, bitch, you ain't paid me in 3 years. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, that's a good point, because most writers go for a long time without getting paid. And so really, you really think by not paying us, that's going to end the strike? Because you're already not paying us. That's why we're doing this. So
right.
Anyway.
But you bring up another good thing that I think is worth mentioning. Anyone can take the time to kind of go look at online photos and things, but writers being writers, y'all by far had the best signs on the picket lines. I mean, there were some gems that you would see.
Yeah.
I should actually go pull some of those up. Maybe we'll put in.
Yeah, there were some great ones.
But yeah, it's always nice in our world, because we're all union guild people, to have that bond and unity that we can feel in that. Because none of us want it to be an us versus them thing, but when you get forced or pigeonholed to be like that, then it just makes you feel more bonded with your side, So, I think those streaming services, especially, I think they just imagined things would go very different. I don't know.
I think so.
This is me, right? Yeah. Okay. How's this? That good? There we go. Okay. Whenever I'm ready? Okay, here we go. Hey everybody, it's Joe. I wanted to tell you about an awesome deal from SoundHard. Whether you are a film or television professional, a podcaster, content creator, musician, studio engineer, or even just a guy like me that doesn't know where to begin, SoundHard offers a wide range of equipment to handle any size production or budget, with expert advice available from an experienced team that works in the field. And now SoundHard is offering new customers 25% off your first rental. Just enter promo code FILMFOLK25, that's FILMFOLK25, no spaces, at checkout. Terms apply. Go to soundhard.com for details.
We pulled up some strike signs. This sign says, "Alexa will not replace us."
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, which, I think that's a good way to get back into it. The AI talk felt like it was a little bit more important for y'all. The actors, it feels like it's more like foundation language to get into the contract now that could be more of an issue later. But
yeah,
the AI stuff is a little bit more pressing for y'all to get hammered out. And correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to this contract, there was no language, right? As far as AI.
No, there was. As far as I know, there was none. I mean, certainly the idea, or at least what was floating around, was the idea that they would hire us to come in and basically rewrite stuff that AI had come up with. That was one aspect. And so we're doing all of the heavy lifting, because AI really can't create. All it's doing is creating ideas based on what's out there in the world, which is what you see from the artwork. They're taking art from the internet and creating something that's based on somebody else's work. So it was that sort of thing. And then pay us pennies on the dollar to do all the heavy lifting to fix what was screwed up in the first place. And so that's bad. But then I see it from the actor's point of view too, which is, they're saying, look, we want to take your image, you're in this movie. And then, I saw somebody make the example that Robert Downey Jr. is in the first Iron Man. And then from then on out, it's just his AI representation in all the other movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have to pay him anywhere near what they paid him, which was a fortune. And so, for them, it works great. For him, not so much. But so it's good that, we won what we won, because it feels like the actors will then be able to, carry that and take it even further if they need to. And that it's not something that we deal with.
Yeah, for sure. And let's see, before we got disconnected, we were going to segue into when you hit your rough spot earlier in your career. And you wrote this very powerful, I don't know if would you call it an open letter or just an open essay. But
maybe an essay. I don't know. Yeah.
it was, I don't know, maybe it was one of those things that really spoke to me, and about the fragility of our industry at times, and how you can be feeling success one second, and then you can be having, roadblock after roadblock, another second. And I think that's, and you can of course speak to it. But that's kind of what ended up happening to you, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a perception that, if you have made a movie, that you're a millionaire. And it's a perception from people outside of Hollywood. People in Hollywood know that's most likely not the case.
Correct.
But out in the world, there is that perception. And though I had several movies, when Friday the 13th, when Drive Angry came out and didn't do so well, Patrick and I had meetings that went away. People had meetings that were scheduled that they were like, we're going to have to postpone this.
Oh, wow.
Because it didn't do well. And, part of it, Nick had been at a bunch of movies, just one right after another. And he felt horrible about that. And he blamed himself. And we were both like, no, it's, there is a fine line that brought us to this place. 3D movies were oversaturated to some degree. And so there were a lot of reasons that we didn't, or maybe the movie sucked, who knows? But there were all of those things joined in together, and the movie didn't do well. And so over a course of time, that hurt us. And so pretty soon I found myself sleeping in my Prius, which is, as I mentioned, far more roomy than you might expect.
Right.
And it was one of those things where it was like, it wasn't something where I was like, I'm homeless. It was something where I was like, well, it's just for tonight. It's just for this weekend. I'll figure this out. I'll find somewhere else to move and stay, and it'll be fine. And next thing I know, I'm 6 months into it, and I've got a pretty good routine. And I was lucky because I had this $10 gym membership. And so I would go work out, and I was in the best shape of my life because I wanted to shower.
Yeah.
And so I'd go work out every single day, and then I'd take my shower, and then, so it was a tricky time, but I never felt bad. I never felt down. There were a couple of times where I felt ashamed because, my friends were out doing other things, and they were making movies and they were doing things. And suddenly I felt like I wasn't a part of that. And that hurt. I mean, I think it hurt my ego more than anything else. It's just, we join as writers, we join this because we want to tell you a story. I don't care really about fame and fortune. I like telling stories, and suddenly I didn't have access to that anymore. And that, I think more than anything else, I saw, my friends still telling their stories, and I was not able. And that's what hurt the most. But, as with everything, you high highs and low lows, and, I bounce back, and the roller coaster continues.
Right. And to give a happy bookend, for that part of the journey, can you speak a little bit to, where you are now and where you're talking from?
Well, I may or may not be in a castle in Portugal. And my wife and I had been looking for a place in Ireland for a long time. And we, and she's Irish. And so we thought, well, let's check out Portugal as well. It's right there. And we'd heard nice things about Portugal. And so we came down and we found this place, and this was it. Now it was in disrepair. It needed a lot of love. And in Portugal around this time of year, the rains come. And so I had started preparing for the rains and fixing the roof. We knew there were a lot of water damage in certain rooms. And so it's been an everyday, it's a fixer upper, and we've been doing it ourselves. So it's, we go in and we tear out this and paint the walls and fix the leaks in the roof. And then here come the rains. And we have a tower, and it is what you would see in a castle. And that tower has some leaks.
Oh my God.
It's been working desperately to fix all the leaks in the tower. And then we put in a stove, sort of fireplace stove in the main living room, and popped a hole through the roof. And the moment we popped the hole, here come the rains.
Oh my God.
And so we were scrambling to fix the hole. And so now it's raining right now. And there's currently one single drip coming out of the ceiling. I'm like, I can't go up there and fix it because it's raining. So there's a bucket. So it's very glamorous, by the way.
I love the idea of a fixer-upper castle.
I know. I was just
Fixer-upper castle.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just thinking, like, if there's a producer for like HGTV listening, there's a opportunity here.
It has been, and the funny thing is, we've filmed everything because my wife's in reality, so she was like, oh, we're going to film everything. So we filmed everything.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so we will one day probably stick that out there into the world and let people watch it, because it has been, it's amazing. I grew up in the South, and this is very much like the South in that, we live on well water. We got 5 different wells, and some of them work and some of them don't. And some of them are so old, there's probably bodies down there, and I can't wait to rappel down and find them. And I know there's treasure. This place has a backstory. I know there's treasure. I haven't found it yet, but I'm slowly whittling away. Like, there's a gap in this wall behind me. There shouldn't be. But if you look at where the wall ends on the outside, granted, there's a fireplace there, but there's space.
Secrets.
What's there? What's in that space? I'm going to find out. So,
it's pirate country, right? Pirate
yes, it is. There's doubloons in these walls.
There you go.
It was Amazing Stories that with the well, that they would send the stuff down the well, and like gold and stuff would come back. Wasn't that Amazing Stories?
I don't remember that one, but I like it.
Yeah, it was. Spoiler: there's an abusive father that eventually he fell down the well, and when the bucket came back with more like gold and everything than it had previously. And everything they were sending down was food. And so I think the note that came back was like, that was the tastiest thing yet. I'm pretty sure those Amazing Stories. But anyway, Todd, a couple of final things just to get us out of here. And thank you again so much for giving us this time.
My pleasure.
We wanted to look at a little bit of where you are now. What are you working on? What have you been up to work-wise? Anything that you want to promote, whether it's something for yourself or someone colleague-wise you want to promote. We just wanted to give a moment for you to be able to either endorse something you're doing or something else someone else has going on.
Yeah, well, much of what I'm doing now, I played the game where I was doing movies for other people for a long time. And so now I'm in a position where I want to do things for myself. Mm-hmm. And so we've got, the castle was an old farm. And so there's a winery downstairs, and there's another building with a winery in it. There's old wine in it, probably port at this point, because it's been there for a while. I haven't broken into it yet, but I will. And this, you can't see, there's this whole bookshelf wall I can turn. There's a whole bookshelf here that's just full of 50-year-old whiskey, if you like that sort of thing.
Oh my God.
Haven't broken into any of it yet, but one day. We're pacing ourselves. And so, but the idea is to shoot stuff here and shoot it ourselves. And so that's what I've been working on. I wrote a biopic, a rock and roll biopic that takes place predominantly in Ireland and England. And we've met with rights holders and music rights holders and so forth. And so that's something that I want to pursue. And then during the strike, I left LA, so I'm no longer on the picket line, because this had been planned since January. Mm. And so we moved here. We were working every day on this, but at night I would come down here and write, because I was like, well, I've got these ideas. And so I did go out with a spec as soon as the strike was over. And so I've got a couple of directors looking at that now. And then Ida and I have a couple of shows that we're doing together. We started our own company so that we can do international shows, since we're now international.
That's so cool.
By the way, international is awesome. If you get a chance to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
It's great out here in the world.
Right. Yeah. That's for us as crew. it's, I mean, one, we have our union locals and things like that. And so there's tricks of getting transfers and getting in and out, but we also are kind of limited to our production hubs, you know. You know, you might think, what's a good place? Maybe St. Paul is a lovely place. I've never been there, but there's not really production there. So it wouldn't, you know, behoove us to do it. But it's nice if you ever get that freedom that you can pick where you want to live in the world and you're not married to where you have to live in the world. So that is, I mean, kudos to you. Well,
by the way, you have a Drive Angry jacket, don't you?
I do have my Drive Angry jacket. The bull by the balls.
Bull by the balls jacket. That jacket, because Patrick and I, because the studio wouldn't pay for jackets for everybody, so Patrick and I bought the jackets.
Oh yeah.
But as a result of that, most of the different crew ended up making their own T-shirts. I have 20 different T-shirts. I have a PA T-shirt. I have a grip T-shirt. I have all these. I have a Teamster T-shirt. I have all these T-shirts. It's my greatest prize that I own. And I brought them all. And Ida was like, "You brought all of your T-shirts?" Yes, I did. So they're back in a drawer. All of my crew T-shirts from Drive Angry.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that's it. That's a funny thing from our side of things. We have, I guess it's sort of a joke on our side, but it's like you're finishing a show, maybe the show was difficult or whatever, but people are just going, well, I better get my T-shirt. You know, like that's, we're not even thinking about like, you know, any kind of income increase or anything like that. It's like just not even a copy of what we worked on. We can't even get a DVD of what we worked on.
I mean, that's why I joined the industry, was for the T-shirts. Free clothes, yeah.
T-shirts are great. Yeah. You guys did the Jonah King T-shirts, right?
Yes, we did.
Or was that?
Yeah.
So I've got several of those.
That shirt, I can put a picture of it on the website. It's so many people have guessed at who that is, because it's a silhouette. There was a spotlight that they put a stencil over so it could shine to the wall, and then the production designer, shout out Nathan Amundsen, he took that stencil and then just made shirts out of it, and so
T-shirts out of it.
It's this silhouette. But I mean, people have guessed every actor under the sun, and to this day, no one has gotten it right, because that silhouette is it's a really cool thing, but it's hard to guess who it is.
Yeah. Are we going to tell people that it's Billy Burke, or are we going to?
Yeah, we can say Billy Burke. Who was a lovely man.
Sparkly Vampire's dad from all the Sparkly Vampire movies.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, Billy was great. Bill Fichtner. I still talk to Bill Fichtner all the time. I just talked to him last week. So
that's cool.
It's he's lovely.
Yeah.
He played the accountant in Drive Angry. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I guess one thing we can mention, since we brought up Nicolas Cage, that time period was, I mean, again, this is speaking to fragility, but people listening may remember a man now in prison named Bernie Madoff, and hindsight 2020, you can say maybe I should invest with someone whose name is Madoff, but Nicholas was one of the people that got financially hit by his schemes, and that's what was the catalyst for like 100 Nicolas Cage movies in a 3-year period or something like that. But he was working nonstop, and he was just burning out. And I think for anyone that's like a Nicolas Cage fan or whatever, you might not know that readily of why he was pumping out quantity over quality for a while. And every now and then of that run, he would be on something cool or fun, and you would get a better version of him. I had the pleasure of working with him. I think I've worked with him 4 times now. But because he's method, he's like a box of chocolates. So every time you get a different Nicolas Cage on your show, expect no less, I'm sure, for any fan. But he was in such a good mood and so excited on Drive Angry. That's one of the things I remember. Because the show I did with him before that and not long after that, he was definitely showing signs of wear and fatigue, but you could tell he was really excited about the project. And he nailed it, I think, as far as what y'all were wanting and everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic. From the moment he walked on set, he knew every line.
Yeah.
And he was coming up asking me things, so this one part. And I was like, dude, I need the script. He knew every line, and I wrote it, and I didn't know any of the lines.
Right.
But I mean, he was fun, but at the same time, he lives in a world we don't live in. Like I can
That's
remember
very true.
somebody was talking. One of the PAs was saying something about going to Target. Nick, you want something from Target? He's Target. What is Target? Like because he doesn't live in that world. And we went to DeLuca, Patrick Lucier, and I with Nick went to a restaurant there in Shreveport one night, and the first 5 minutes somebody comes up, Mr. Cage, can I have your autograph? And he was lovely to everyone, but maybe 3 minutes in, as the liquor started to flow, suddenly it was like the Beatles. I mean, we were completely surrounded, and he was like, I'd never seen him so uncomfortable. He was like, so we're gonna go now, right? And so so we were like, yeah. And so we all stood up, and the food hadn't even shown up. And so we let him outside where his Teamster was waiting for him. He jumped in the car and he drove off. And he had left his credit card for us to pay for the food because we hadn't paid for the food. And so DeLuca was sitting there, and we were like, well, what are we going to do? Should we go get the food? And DeLuca was like, you guys realize we're in Shreveport, Louisiana with Nick Cage's black American Express card. So anyway, we got the food and went back to our hotel rooms and ate it.
That's great. We should also mention that as Katrina happened in New Orleans, the film industry had kind of relocated up in Shreveport in the northern part of the state, if you don't know where Shreveport is. But I would say, maybe like by 2009, 2010, I think everything was kind of flowing back New Orleans way. Shreveport was a great place to work in, though, just because the downtown kind of becomes a back lot. The police bend over backwards for you there. I mean, I felt like you could have asked anything, and they'd be like, "We'll make it happen."
Well, you're all New Orleans now, right?
Yes, pretty much everyone that was relocated up there because of the storm now has returned. So
let's come back. So are they doing anything in Shreveport anymore? Or is it
every now and then there's something up there, but I think logistically the number one issue with it is it didn't have a direct flight to Los Angeles. That was
right.
And then
that's always an issue.
Let's be honest. If you have a choice between New Orleans or Shreveport, producers are probably going to pick New Orleans. But yeah, I mean, like for what we were doing, I mean, that place was perfect for filming. Yeah. Easy to get around,
Yeah.
Just not a lot to do. Anywho's. Well, Todd, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Anything you want to say, or soapbox moment, or anything? It can be industry in general. Any advice you'd like to impart on anyone listening? It can be good advice, bad advice.
I mean, I would say, looking back, if I had it all to do again, I probably would do the same thing because I like the journey that I've taken. But if somebody else wants to take this journey and not make the same mistakes, I think I would suggest make your own films. Don't just write and then rely on somebody else to come in and save the day for you. We have cameras now. These cameras can do
right.
everything that we did when we started out. I mean, you can make your own movie. You can light your own movie. You can do it all. Just like you guys. There is no doubt in my mind, with everything that you guys have done and everything that you guys do, you could go out tomorrow and make a fantastic movie because you know how to do everything. You can light it. You can cut the sound together. You can prop it. You can do everything. You can wardrobe it. You guys together can go out and make an astounding film. And I say, go do it. I'll help you if you want.
Oh, I appreciate that, Todd. That's a wonderful thing you just said. That's another thing. Maybe we should, we'll post it in notes or we can talk about it in the outro. But there's been really, really, I don't know, at least for me, like warming comments that a lot of writers and actors have been saying, in the course of 2023 that I just saw Jason Alexander yesterday had a really lovely thing he was saying about crew. But it's nice to know that we're trying to be in the same group, that we're trying to be on the same page and everything. Kind of going back to being forced into that us versus them kind of thing, that we want the solidarity with the unions and the guilds. And I think more, and I could be wrong, but it just feels like more than ever in the history of our industry, we're closer in solidarity than we've been, at least, I mean, certainly in the last 20 years since I've been in. But it warms my heart. I'll just say it that way.
Well, it's from mine.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Todd. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thanks for having me.
We won't keep you around anymore. Safe trip to go run. Well, we'll just say going to the airport. But talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thanks, Todd.
All right.
Take care. That was really cool. Todd was great. That was better than I think I could have even imagined. And living in a castle, a little jealous. I don't know. What did y'all think about what Todd had to say?
I thought it was informative, and I didn't realize that the residuals kind of kept on taking a hit after the switch to DVDs, which is just very funny that they keep on saying, like, no, this is new.
Oh, we're going to get to it.
This is new, or even not we're going to get to it, but this is new, and therefore we can't back it, and we don't know if people are going to watch it, which is...
Or bear with us. We're just navigating some new territory, but
which is...
And then they never came back to adjust it.
Yeah, which is just like silly and... just think about how we consume media and how everybody does. Like, no, it's gonna work. It's how we do. But the DVD thing is what is funny to me, because streaming, okay, sure.
Yeah,
I kind of get it, but also now in 2023, I don't. Like, that's how people watch. But DVDs, I'm like,
yeah, I was surprised that it was happening earlier than I think we realized.
Yeah, I had no idea. So. Yeah.
And in our next installment, we're gonna have we're gonna be SAG focused, Screen Actors Guild, and hopefully we're gonna have Joe Stunts join us, and he can speak to the SAG strike and everything. He had told me in conversation, because we're working on the same thing right now, that when he started in the industry, his paychecks and his residuals, he said, income-wise, was about 50-50. So it was a pretty even income. He said, to go to the present, it's 85-15.
15 being the residuals.
Being the residuals.
Yeah.
So now the bulk majority of his income is the paychecks that he's making, but he can't rely on the supplemental anymore, because it's diminished to such a degree. And he can speak more to that when he's here, but I thought that was fascinating. That's why I think I caught Todd off guard, but that's why I was trying to ask him about if he can put a percentage on it, because that's what Joe had said.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. I think we can close out with that, but even though we don't get residuals, it's not something, some people I think below the line get upset or jealous at the residuals, but it's also kind of, I don't look at it that way, just because of the nature of how everything went the paths that it went. And they're on the creative side, we're on the technical side, unless you're ironically in the art department.
Yeah.
But it's what it is, and when someone is used to having something and then that something is being taken away, you need to replace it with something else. It's just the way it is. So anyway, with that said, hope everyone enjoyed listening to that, and thank you again, Todd, for joining us. And we will continue this next, like I said, with the SAG installment. And let's see, Zoe, you want to close us out here?
Absolutely. Do you like what we're doing here? Do you have thoughts, comments, questions? Maybe you have an idea or suggestions for topics you want to hear about? Well, you can find us on the interwebs. You can email us at filmfolklorepodcast@gmail.com. That's filmfolklorepodcast@gmail.com. Folk with an L. You can find us on socials. Instagram's Film Folklore Podcast. Facebook group, Film Folklore. Twitter, X, the Musk thing, @the Film Folklore. It's all pretty film folklore. So you just got to remember that one. And we're on Truth Social as well. Love that Truth. Just kidding. We hate him. But thank you all for joining us today. Sorry, Chris. Sorry, Joe. Yeah. Justin, Jed.
Oh,
Goodbye.
Bye.
bye. I just had this moment where I'm like, are we taking that? What do I say?
Goodbye.